Welcome, everyone. I'm Michelle Pacansky-Brock. I am faculty mentor for online teaching and learning with CVC and @ONE. We are state-level initiatives in the California community college system focused on increasing access to high-quality online courses for our students. And today's session is part of our Fall into Humanized Online Teaching, a Pathway to Equity series. The topic that we're here today to engage in is changing students' learning narratives with a self-affirming icebreaker and a wisdom wall. We have a lot packed into today's session. We'll be thinking about psychological interventions. The self-affirming icebreaker and wisdom wall are examples of those. And those are research-based practices that are shown to decrease equity gaps, which is pretty amazing. And we're also going to be taking another look at culture and thinking about cultural mismatches. And you are also going to have an opportunity to engage in a Flipgrid activity using video. So that's what the hands-on portion of our session will be comprised of later on today. And I just said all this, but we'll get started with a warm up, and I'm going to share a little story with you in a moment, and then we'll move into the lean-in session, which is the presentation. The engage will be the hands-on Flipgrid demo fun, and we'll cool down as always with the discussion and invite you to ask questions with your microphone if you'd like to do that. So for our warm-up, I'm going to actually stop sharing for just a couple of minutes. Okay, so for those of you who were with us in our last session, we learned about warm demander pedagogy and thought about how building trust and relationships with students is a foundation upon which we should challenge students and hold them to high standards. One of the characteristics of a warm demander, as we learned, is exhibiting personal warmth opposed to impersonal professionalism. Sharing our personal challenges is a way to build trust with our students. Remember when we thought about that definition of trust? It's taking something important to you and making it vulnerable to another person. That's a sign of trust. And Zaretta Hammond refers to this as selective vulnerability. A lot of faculty that I've had conversations with like that idea because it helps you to understand that you are in control of what it is that you select to share with your students. It's not letting everybody into every aspect of your life. So I'd like to make an effort to demonstrate that to you today in our warm-up. So I'm going to share a story with you. Some of you may already know this about me, and I'm imagining many of you do not. I was born with a congenital heart defect. And although I didn't know it until I was 21, I learned that my aortic valve, which is the big valve in your heart, had 2 flaps instead of 3. And this is called a bicuspid aortic valve, which is the most common type of congenital heart disease. When I was 34, I had to have open heart surgery to have my valve replaced. The valve I have now is a titanium mechanical valve, which, by the way, sounds and feels like a loud ticking clock inside my body 24/7. I hear it and feel it all the time, even right now. And if you listen closely, you might hear it too. I've had people sit next to me say they could hear it. I've had people have a recording of one of my presentations and try to figure out what that clicking noise was. That's my heart. Technology really is in my heart. So my heart condition, why am I telling you this? We're getting there. My heart condition limits the degree to which I can participate in cardiac exercise. I get winded a lot faster than most people my age. And that means that it's harder for me to do things that may seem regular and typical to a lot of people, especially the people that I spend a lot of my time with. And that includes going on hikes, walking up multiple flights of stairs, and just walking fast, especially when I have my heavy backpack on, carrying my laptop, which used to be a regular occurrence before COVID. So cardiac exercise is healthy for me, just like it is for other people. So I still do it. But what I have to be mindful about is that it looks different for me. So when I'm in a group setting and I'm doing something like riding a stationary bike at the gym, I can't do what that person next to me is doing, even if they look very similar to me. And for me, it's so frustrating and so hard. When I take a class like a kickboxing class or step aerobics, it's just not going to look the same for me. And that's really hard for me. I feel judged a lot of the time, and a lot of that is my own personal narrative. Sometimes I wish I could wear a t-shirt that says I'm not lazy, I have a heart condition. The reason I'm telling you this, and the reason I tell my students this story, is because learning is a lot like exercising. We all have different rhythms when it comes to learning. And I really want my students to know that. So when I release a new module, I don't tell students how long it's going to take them to complete, because I know I'll be creating a barrier for students who need more time. Accepting our different rhythms in life is one of the most important and valuable things we can do for ourselves. And it's also one of the hardest, because we are in a culture that sets us up to always compare ourselves to others. So I hope each of you remembers this when it comes to things like creating a liquid syllabus, recording videos, designing your Humanized homepage. That's all things that you're learning. Some of you are picking things up quicker because of the skills that you brought into this course, this webinar series. And for others, it's going to take a lot longer. So you have to give yourself grace, and I hope that you can do that. Each of us will get to the same destination, but how we get there is going to look different. Okay, where's my Zoom now? So what I believe is the hardest part of humanizing is not the technology. It is taking off the emotional armor that we've been taught to wear. But what we need to acknowledge is that in that vulnerable place, when we go there, that's where we're going to find authentic connection with our students, with our colleagues. And it's also where we find joy and fulfillment. And I don't know if I've been saying that enough in our earlier sessions. Fabiola Torres is here, and I know that she's probably going like this because she and I talk about this a lot and learn from each other a lot about these topics. But when you connect with your students, you are going to feel more fulfillment as a teacher, as an educator. And I like to really extend this idea into the workplace too, because we need more human connection in our workplaces now more than ever to get us through the angst and the uncertainty that we're going through. So I'd like you to take 2 minutes now to, you can write or you can just sit quietly and reflect about aspects of your life you might share forward with your students to support their learning in some way. So think about that concept of selective vulnerability and how you might bring it into what you do. And I'm just going to mute my computer and let you work on that for 2 minutes. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move forward. I hope you enjoyed that opportunity to reflect a little bit and think about what you can bring into your teaching through selective vulnerability. Now we just have to do it, right? And that's the harder part. So let's move forward with changing students' learning narratives with the self-affirming icebreaker and wisdom wall. I'm going to loop back to some of the ideas from some of our earlier sessions, which I think is very important to remind us where we are anchoring our focus. We started our series by thinking about what an equity-minded practitioner is. And we used this definition: an equity-minded practitioner commits to seeing and removing barriers that disproportionately impact students from racially, ethnically, and other minoritized groups. So that is really kind of the foundation that it's our guiding light, you could say, that we have, we are using through every session that we've engaged in this series. And two of the words that we looked at earlier, I think warrant repeating, and they are equality and equity. And they're two words that often get interchanged, but they actually mean two different things. And for educators who are working to achieve equity, as we are in the California Community College system, it's really important to understand how these two words differ. So let's just take a moment to address this once again. Equality and equity are not the same thing. Equality says treat all students the same to be fair. And I want you to really think about that and reflect on your teaching and also the experiences that you've had as a student in college in the past, and think about if this is something that you can relate to, right? So when we turn down a student who asks for more time on an assignment and says, this is our late policy, everybody has to abide by it because that's the only way we can be fair to everyone. Is that really being fair to everyone? That's something that I want everyone to think about, right? If a student has a loss in their family, is it fair to that student to not give that student more time to demonstrate their learning on that assignment, to demonstrate what they know, if they're just not in a place where they can do it at that moment? Is that fair? Those are the kinds of things that we want to think about, is how equality leaves people out. And that's how we got where we are today with the equity gaps that we're being critical about. Equity, on the other hand, says ensure all students have what they need to be successful. It's a much different mindset. It's a much different way of looking at things. It gets us out of thinking about our students through a deficit-based lens, and it gets us thinking about our own processes, our own systems, our own structures that we've created in higher education, things that we have direct opportunity to change, and then other things that don't feel so touchable, but are still changeable, but just are going to take a lot more time, right? And we are using this quote here as a lovely, would that be a metaphor? I don't know. Would it be a metaphor? I have a hard time with that, but it's a visual in my head. It gives me a picture, and that's something that for me really resonates differently with me when I can have something that I can see in my mind and make sense of when we're talking about an abstract concept. And so this is the chart that we looked at a few weeks ago that looks at the average success rate in online courses in the California Community College system, represented by the horizontal bar at the top. And we have this disaggregated by race and ethnicity, and we see that it's only the white and Asian student groups that succeed above that success rate average. And it's our African American and Black, American Indian, Native American, Hispanic, and Pacific Islander students who fall below. And so what we are looking at is this gap. This is where we are working. This is where we are critically asking, what are the barriers here and how can we remove them to ensure more students have the opportunity to achieve success? And Over the past 4 sessions, we've been considering why it's important not to teach online in a veil of anonymity, which is really where we start as online teachers. We can't teach and achieve equity when our students are merely names on a screen to us. This is where bias flourishes. This is where threat reigns. And this is where cheating prospers. To humanize our online teaching and our students' learning, we need to understand our students as humans with rich, vibrant stories who have each been prepared differently based upon their past life experiences. We want to understand our students in that context. We've also been considering the significant role that emotions play in academic success in college. Students who feel threatened about being judged and stereotyped are much less likely to establish a sense of belonging. Students start a course from a place of distrust. Students who start a course from a place of distrust are much less likely to lean in and ask for help. So building trust and creating a place that is identity safe are parts of our roles as teachers. Over the past 4 sessions, we've also considered our online courses as experiences that roll out over time. And we've been targeting the early part of the course as this high opportunity zone for mitigating threat and belongingness and certainty and developing trust, right? And so the elements that we've looked at previously include the liquid syllabus, the course card and humanized homepage, the Getting to Know You survey. Today, we'll be looking at a self-affirming icebreaker and a wisdom wall. And all of this is couched in culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. The model that we focused on last week starts to put all this together and gives us a visual of trust as that essential foundation. It's the first thing we build, upon which we get to know our students and build relationships with them, get to understand them as real people. And then on top of those foundational elements, we hold all students to high standards. And by combining the care and the push using warm demander pedagogy, which we again talked about last time, this is how we get more students to lean in and hold themselves actually more accountable for their learning. Because when there's someone on the other side of that screen or sitting right next to you, and you know that they believe in you and they have high expectations for you, a person is going to lean in and challenge themselves. And then on top of that, we looked at WISE feedback last time and considered how to integrate those high standards, ability, action, and effort into our feedback to ensure that we're reaching our high opportunity students. So as we keep our eye on establishing belonging and supporting the effective dimensions of learning, today we're continuing this work, and we're going to start by looping back to the topic of culture. In our first session together, if you remember that, if you were with us, we thought about how culture is like the water that fish swim in. The longer a fish is in that water, the more difficult it is to detect. Everything we do is informed by culture. And while there are many, many cultures coexisting in our classes, higher education in the United States is largely influenced by a particular culture, which is referred to as white dominant culture. If you're someone like me, who's white, who has been deeply influenced by white dominant culture, seeing its influence on our practices is really difficult, and it takes self-work. But once you see it, it's pretty fascinating. So developing that self-awareness is a really important part of the equity journey, and it is the hardest part, and it's the part that never ends. But if you're someone who identifies with a different culture, you're likely to feel like you're swimming against the current. In this situation, the same cultural influences are very clear because they create mismatches with your own values. And if your culture is not acknowledged, if you feel like your culture is a barrier, the only option you have is to fit in. But fitting in is an exhausting, painful, and toxic experience for a human being. It goes against a human being's natural inclination to want to belong and be valued for who you are. Our goal is to design teaching and learning environments that embrace diversity as an asset and ensure that all students feel welcomed and valued for their true, authentic selves. That is the goal of inclusive teaching. That is the goal of humanized online teaching. So let's talk a bit more about this idea of cultural mismatches and how to reduce or eliminate them. This section of this presentation is largely influenced by what I've learned by reading this phenomenal book that I've referenced several times previously by Zaretta Hammond, titled Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain. I highly recommend it if you haven't taken a look at it and if these ideas really intrigue you and you want to learn more. Okay, so you may feel overwhelmed, and this is one of the things that Zaretta Hammond says in her book. She often hears from teachers like, how am I supposed to be knowledgeable about all these cultures? I just can't get there. And I had that same kind of mindset when I started getting engaged with culturally responsive teaching. And one of the things that's been super helpful is learning about research that cultural anthropologists have done about cultures around the world. They have placed cultures on a spectrum and found that most cultures lean somewhere all cultures fall somewhere on the spectrum from individualistic or low context culture to collectivist or high context culture. These might be terms that you've heard of before, but we want to unpack these a little bit. And if you can just start here and understand what the difference is between individualistic and collectivist culture, it's super helpful and you'll be well on your way. So in individualistic culture, identity is rooted in oneself and one's personal accomplishments. How something is said is less important than what is said. Competition is valued over cooperation. Individual effort is important in business and learning. Efficiency and speed are valued. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, with collectivist or high context cultures, identity is rooted in groups, family, culture, work. How it is said is more important than what is said. Cooperation is valued over competition. Relationships are essential to business and learning. Accuracy and depth of understanding are valued. So that's a lot to take in, but I think you're starting to see these themes and these differences between individualistic and collectivist cultures. Whoops. Sorry about that. I don't know if you can see these words. I had to make them small to fit them all, but you do have the slides that you can open on your own side. This is a chart that lists countries from around the world, and it gives them a score from 0 to 100. And the higher the score, the more individualistic the culture is. And so you see that the country that has the highest score, if you can see that, and if you can't, I'll tell you, is the United States. So the United States stands out as a highly individualistic culture. And a lot of those values from the individualistic or the low context cultures are reflected in higher education and the experience, and also in education in general, the experiences that our students engage in. And that can create cultural mismatches. I went through this chart and I just highlighted the countries from South and Central America, thinking about the Hispanic serving institutions in our system and the large number of students from these groups that we serve in the California community college system. And I think that that sends a pretty compelling message about cultural mismatches. So culturally responsive teaching reduces cultural mismatches. And just a few of the things that we can do in terms of thinking about bringing culturally responsive teaching into the way that we teach, aside from the trust and the relationship building and the getting to know our students, which is all part of it too. Think about bringing in real world connections and students' life experiences into your class. Integrate metaphors. Why I was alluding to the slide with the flower on it earlier. Metaphors have a way of triggering aspects of our brain and bringing up visual images, which makes things more recognizable and meaningful, depending on our cultural background. And storytelling, oral storytelling. Use tools that have students participate in voice or video. And we're going to talk more about that, because that storytelling part is very cultural. And when we bring that into the class, it's breaking down that cultural mismatch. And it's also bringing in the verbal and the nonverbal communications, the high context aspect, right? The how something is said, as opposed to just the what is said, which is all we get through text. And integrate cooperative learning. Bring your students into the learning experience. Have them be active participants in the construction of knowledge. So with regards to storytelling, aside from being culturally inclusive, which we already said, selective vulnerability breeds empathy. That's looping back to our warm-up from today. So when you hear someone telling a story, there's actually brain research that's been done. It's called neural coupling. And it shows that there's an alignment between the parts of the brain that are activated in the speaker and the parts of the brain that are activated in the listener. And that has been shown to be an example of the formation of empathy. And empathy is how we get to connection. So this is really important. And it's why we will be looking at Flipgrid today in just a little bit. So psychological interventions are also, interestingly, a way to bring in aspects of students' life experiences. Although the psychological intervention research is not research that is coming out of culturally responsive teaching, there's an overlap there. These interventions are actually coming out of social psychological research. So I find it really fascinating when we see overlaps between these different aspects of research. This should be familiar to you. We've looked a great deal at stereotype threat, and we were honored with the presence of Claude Steele to kick off our series back in September. And he had a wonderful hour that he spent with us talking about stereotype threat. And we've been thinking about the ways that stereotype threat is active in our courses, and even some of the ways that we can activate it through our choice of words, and how we can mitigate it through some of our humanizing elements that we've been focusing on. We've also thought about imposter syndrome and belongingness uncertainty. And these are phenomena that have been referred to as cognitive underminers because they block a person's ability to perform to their full capacity. They're blockers. They're thinking blockers. And we know from the research that they affect everyone, but they disproportionately impact students from non-dominant groups, okay? And so when we're thinking about equity, this is, of course, an area that's really important to keep in mind and to mitigate in our teaching. And these psychological interventions are things that we can do to mitigate these barriers. So this slide and the link at the bottom of the screen is from Stanford University. This is where this slide was created, or I should say adapted from. I just have a few of these empirically validated strategies to reduce stereotype threat, many of which are going to sound very familiar to you already. Convey that diversity is valued. That's something we've been thinking about in our liquid syllabus and other aspects of our course. Convey high standards and validate students' abilities to meet them. We thought about that with wise feedback. Promote growth mindset. That was another element of our last session together. Value students' individuality. create ways for them to share their aspects of their identity, improve cross-group interactions within your course, support students' sense of belonging. And one way, that's a big focus of our session, one way we can do that is to show that worries about belonging in college are normal, not unique to them. Also show that struggles are normal. That's another way to integrate growth mindset. And to use something that is come out in the research called value affirmations. And we're going to dig into that one a little bit. And it involves having students reflect on and discuss core personal values. These social psychological interventions are referred to as WISE interventions in much of the research. And so they fall into that same category as WISE feedback. They're instructional activities that alter a specific way that people think or feel over time. So it's actually not just in that moment, but the effects of the interventions carry forward. Shown in research to flip negative internal narratives that minoritized students have that prevent them from achieving their full ability. And I found this interesting. I didn't know this. The term WISE comes from gay culture in the 1950s, which, typo there, described straight people who understood the full humanity of gay people at a time of intense discrimination. WISE schooling is a term that's been used by Claude Steele. And of course, we're also familiar with the concept of WISE feedback. So they all kind of fall into the same category. So what are value affirmations? It's pretty simple. The activity involves writing about core personal values. And the psychological process that is affected, so that kind of paying it forward, right? Not just in the moment of the writing, but paying it forward. It's proven to mitigate stereotype threat and belongingness uncertainty, which negatively affect the academic performance of minoritized students. So in one study, value affirmations were shown to there was improvement shown in gender achievement gaps in college science courses. We've seen improvement in grades for first-generation college students in biology. Again, we see a lot of research being done in STEM because that is where equity gaps are the worst. That study too, the effect was actually shown to persist for 3 years, which is a bit startling. And there's new research that is looking at using text messaging, 4-minute interactions on text for on-the-go value affirmations. So this is going to be an area that I think we'll see really expanding a lot in the future. So we're adapting this for an online course. Oftentimes in a classroom setting, students are asked to sit down and independently write. And so for our online course, we are turning this into an actual student-to-student interaction activity. And so we're calling this a self-affirming icebreaker activity. And it's one of the things that we recommend to integrate into the first week of your course. It simply includes the process of reflecting. So giving students a list of values and having them pick 2 to 3 that are important to them. Writing on their own. So this is something that you could have students turn in. You don't have to. You prompt them to write about their life, think about where these values come into play, and spend some time writing about them. And then the sharing piece is where you have the students bring their contributions back into the course. So this prompt, of course, can be adapted in different ways. One prompt that we really find wonderful is to select an object from your life that represents one or more of these values. And then you can have students in a Canvas discussion, if you'd like, share a photograph of the object and explain how it reflects them. In that discussion, they could use video or voice. That is an option in Canvas discussions. Or you can use a tool like Flipgrid or VoiceThread to record a video comment and show the object. So students would be showing the object as they're speaking, and that's what we'll be modeling here today. And this is just a screenshot from one of Denise Meduli-Williams' self-affirming icebreakers from one of her ESL courses. So you can see that while the students are using video, they're showing an object, which takes some of the pressure off of having the video be straight on your face, right? So it's a nice way to warm students up to this idea of using video. And the reason why we do have Flipgrid and VoiceThread highlighted is because they are two tools that do integrate captioning. I do want to note, and I'll probably say this again, VoiceThread is a premium tool, so it's not free. Many California community colleges do have a site license for VoiceThread. So if you want to learn more about that, I encourage you to ask about it. And the second activity or intervention that we're highlighting here today is the wisdom wall. And this activity is designed to mitigate belongingness, uncertainty, and stereotype threat by normalizing struggle and promoting growth mindset about intelligence, presenting positive role models from diverse groups. And this is how the learning or the wisdom wall works. Just like our last activity, it starts with a process of reflection. You ask students, at the end of your course, you ask your students to reflect back to the start of your course and try to remember how they were feeling. Now that you're finishing the course, what do you know now that you wish you had known then? So that's the reflection part. Again, it happens at the end of the course. You're having students think back to that state of mind that they were at the beginning. And then you invite them to share your thoughts in the form of advice for future students. If you leave a comment, that is also granting permission to share it with future incoming students. And this actually shouldn't say write, it should say share. This is an activity that we highly recommend doing through video. When students share the videos at the end of the course, then when the students come into the next course, you curate the videos and share them with the future students. And that's how a wisdom wall works. So you can think about it working in two ways: to actually have the end of the term students reflect on their growth and progress and step into the role of an expert, but then also have the students at the beginning of the class, when they're at that point of anxiety and threat, listen to the voices of their peers talk about their struggles and normalize it and help them get through it. We do have an example of a wisdom wall activity and a self-affirming icebreaker in the Canvas Commons designed for Flipgrid, if you'd like to take a look at that. And I want to point out about the wisdom wall, it's best to set this up as extra credit or ungraded, so students who choose not to participate are not penalized. And it's that requirement: if you leave a comment, I'm going to share your video forward, unless you have some other way for students to acknowledge granting you that permission. That's an absolutely imperative step in this, because if you're sharing student contributions outside of your current course, that would be a FERPA violation unless you have permission from your students. So bake that into the process. And I have a clip here of a wisdom wall. I'm just going to share a little bit of a comment.
So at the start of this class, I was feeling very excited. This was one of the first online classes that I had to take after the whole coronavirus situation had happened. So I wasn't sure, how the teacher was going to be, how they had adapted already to teaching online, if they were going to be able to meet my needs. But I really wish that I would have known then that this professor, first of all, Michelle, is amazing. She's so good at communicating and so understanding. And I wish I would have known that at the beginning, because I do get kind of paranoid and I get scared that, I'm not going to be able to communicate to my teacher. They're not going to understand where I'm coming from. If, I can't get an assignment submitted on time, if I'm having some issues. So I would just recommend, to take deep breaths, to realize that communication is everything. If you don't communicate, then, you're not going to get the help that you need, and you're not going to get your questions answered. So never be afraid to reach out to your professor, to reach out to.
Pretty good advice, right? I find that my students give the same advice that I give. and that it resonates very differently with students when they hear the advice come from their peers. So I'm seeing some comments in the chat about getting permission. And I just want to acknowledge that the method I use is to bake the permission into the activity, to specify by commenting here, you are granting me permission to share with future students. And that's why I don't tie points to the assignment. I actually either do it as extra credit or make it non-graded. And I think that is fine. I think it works very well that way because I don't see that the incoming students are actually going to listen to an entire class of comments anyway. They're going to pick and choose and just kind of poke around and listen. So that's how I approach that. So one of the tools that we do recommend is Flipgrid, and I have a link to a fabulous article written by Maritez Apigo on the screen here, and I highly recommend that you take a look at it to learn more about Flipgrid and how to use it to humanize your course. It's an external tool, so it's not something that you'll find innate, or I should say native inside of Canvas. It's external, but there's an integration into Canvas that we're going to talk about. It enables asynchronous voice and video conversations, and it includes automatic captions. I do want to acknowledge one thing as we get started. I personally have not been able to figure out the workflow for a person who leaves a comment in video through ASL, how we add captions to that video. There are folks out there who are doing this, and I don't have it figured out yet. So I want to be very honest with you. And if anybody has suggestions or says, oh, I know how to do that, then I want to lean on the knowledge of the room here. So again, let me say that again. If a person is leaving a video comment in ASL, if they're signing their comment, how would we caption it so that others who don't know ASL can engage with the comment? That's the question. So if you're interested in using Flipgrid, I'm not going to go through these in detail. These steps are here for you, but I'm going to actually demonstrate steps 2 and 3 for you. Step 1, I can't demonstrate because we already have this step done with our Canvas instance. The first step is to add the Flipgrid LTI to your Canvas course. LTI stands for Learning Tools Interoperability, and it's an industry standard that allows for Canvas to plug in with external tools, okay? And so there's a Flipgrid LTI that you can add to Canvas, and it allows for Flipgrid to integrate. This is really important if you want to use Flipgrid because it's the only method that ensures that students will not be prompted to create their own account, which is the most secure and equitable option for students. It also adds a speed grader integration, which is a plus for you. So check with your distance education support team to determine how to proceed with adding the LTI to Canvas. Every college has a different process, and so you need to ask locally, and you may even find out that the integration is already done. So that's where you're going to start with step 1. And we have the LTI instructions here if you do find out that it is something you are permitted to do at the course level in your own course. It's not that hard to do. So then step 2 is to create an external tool assignment in Canvas. You have the steps here. Again, I'm not going to go through them. I'm going to show them in a minute. And step 3 is to set up the Flipgrid activity in Flipgrid. So you set up the Canvas assignment and then the activity in Flipgrid. And these are the steps for that. So what I'm going to do now is go over to a course that we have set up for today's session. Let me move this out of the way. And in this course, we're going to have you self-enroll in just a few minutes. We're not going to do that yet because I want to get this demonstration done. I want you to be paying attention to what I'm doing. I'm going to show you how to set up a Flipgrid activity. I'm cheating a little bit because I have some of the instructions already done, but I'm going to walk you through everything. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over to the modules area. I'm in a teacher role here, right? And I am going to add a wisdom wall activity to this module here called wrapping up. So to do that, I'm going to select the plus icon over on the right side of the module title. Next to add, select assignment and choose create assignment. Give it a title and select add item. Okay. Now I'm going to click on that title to open the assignment. And it's a good practice to add your rubric first. This is a little confusing, but when you use an LTI or an external tool assignment in Canvas, it kind of breaks the rubric. So it won't show on the rubric on the assignment page, but it will show in the speed grader. So I'm going to skip that step for now, but that's what I would recommend doing first. And what we want to do is select the edit button at the top to enter the editing view of the assignment. And we're going to get started by adding instructions here at the top. And that's where I'm going to cheat a little bit. I have these already made. So I'm just going to go over here and copy this code from this page. So just pretend that I'm typing this right now. Basically, it's creating the same thing as typing instructions. I just have them already made. So we've got very clear instructions that include an overview that tells students, or I should say you, participants, what you're going to do and why. It has instructions, step-by-step instructions that include how to leave comments. It has a need help area. And then the last thing, which I forgot to add, is the grading criteria. You really should add your grading criteria down here. This one, oh, now I know why I didn't leave grading criteria, because this one was going to be ungraded. So if this was a graded assignment, you would add your grading criteria. So I'm going to leave the points down below at 0. I'm going to skip over assignment group. I'm going to change the display grade as over to complete or incomplete, because that's what I like to do. Now this is where you set it up as external tool. Next to submission type, select external tool. Okay. Under the heading, enter or find an external tool URL, you can click find and look for Flipgrid and select Flipgrid. Then select load this tool in a new tab. That's the cleanest way I find to use Flipgrid. And give it a due date at the bottom. I'll make it due on November 12th. Now I'm going to click save and publish. So now we've completed that step 2 on the slides. Okay. Step 1 was integrate the LTI, which, as I said, was already done. Step 2 is set up the external tool assignment in Canvas. So that's done now. So now what we need to do is set it up in Flipgrid. So we're going to click on this button down here that says load and the name of the assignment. This is the Flipgrid prompt. It doesn't look very inviting, right? So I'm going to make it look a little bit better by going up to the 3 dots at the top and selecting edit topic. And in here, give me a second here. I'm going to take this piece out about it being a Canvas assignment, which is not necessary. It's ideal that you want to actually leave some clear instructions here. I'm going to add some formatting. So this just kind of reiterates the prompt. Here's your opportunity to share words of wisdom with future Fall into Humanizing, a Pathway to Equity participants. Please reflect on what you've learned through your participation in our sessions. If you could share some wisdom for future participants, what would it be? You have 3 minutes to record your response. When you're ready, follow one of these steps. And so I explain how to leave a video or a voice comment. The next thing you would do is under topic media, record a quick video. And if I click here, it would actually record from my webcam. I'm going to actually upload a video that I've recorded previously because, as I said, I'm cheating today to save us a little bit of time.
Hi there. For this activity, we'd like you.
So that's my video. Once we've recorded the video or uploaded the video, click next. You can select a frame from the video if you don't like the one it shows, and this will show up as your poster or your thumbnail image on the video. Quick tip, always smile for a couple seconds at the end of your video, and it makes it really easy. And then click confirm. I'm confirming my cover photo now, and it's uploading the video. This video will be auto captioned. Of course, it will take a little bit of time for that to happen, but it will occur. And teachers in Flipgrid have the ability to edit captions, but students do not. Okay, so teachers can edit captions, students cannot. We are very hopeful Flipgrid changes that soon. So when you see the success message, click done. And then we want to change the recording time from 90 seconds. I like to up it a little bit so folks don't get cut off, and set it to 3 minutes. And then just click on update topic. So now it's a little bit more welcoming, right? We've humanized it with a video. We've got some clear instructions here. The last thing I want to do is go up to those 3 dots again and select, I guess it's active already. I thought I had to select activate topic, but I guess I don't. Okay, well, you all let me know if it isn't working for you, but it should be active, I assume. And that assignment should be set up now for you all. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back into our course and go to our home page. And down here for you, I'm going to add a link here. Select link and then course links. Choose assignments, and that's where I'll find the wisdom wall that we just set up. It's this one. And click save. So now we'd like you to self-enroll in this course. And Helen has the link there for you to go to in the chat. If you could kindly click on that link and follow, oops, that shouldn't be 1, 2 there. Follow the instructions up here to self-enroll. You're going to see a join. Let me go over to student view. Oops, and I don't actually, let me leave student view. No, did I publish that assignment, Helen? I think I did.
Yes, you did. You did.
Okay, great.
Let me double check.
Okay, so, and this is not showing the join course. I guess it doesn't show that in student view, but you should see an option in the right corner to select join course. And once you have joined, self-enrolled in the course by joining it, we want to invite you to participate in one of those 2 Flipgrids. So the links on the home page should get you straight to the assignment. You can follow the instructions just like a student would. And we're getting some help in the chat to see the, let me.
Well, it's saying it's part of an unpublished module.
Okay, I haven't published the module. Can you get in there and do that?
Yeah, I'm trying to do that.
Thank you, Helen. I appreciate it. I'm going to open up an incognito window and go to the course so that I see what everybody else is seeing.
If you got a error for the wisdom wall, try refreshing your page. And again, because now the module is published.
Thank you, Helen. So this is what you should be seeing. Join this course. If you do have a small screen, you might have to kind of make it bigger. And we're going to let you have about 15 minutes to participate in one of those 2 activities. I'm going to say this, it's on the homepage, but if you are in our digital badge cohort for this series, we'd like you to participate in the wisdom wall, because you're going to do something similar to the self-affirming icebreaker in our course. Okay. And if anybody gets stuck and needs help self-enrolling, let us know, and either Helen or Stacy can actually meet you in another Zoom if we need to do that.
The thing about passwords, some of you are saying your password isn't working. This is in the @1 instance of Canvas. So if you're trying to use your college login credentials, that's why it's not working. If you don't yet have an @1 account, that's where you'll follow the directions in the second part of the step 2, where it tells you how to set up an @1 account. And there's a little video tutorial. And we can't retrieve passwords, so I strongly encourage you to write your login credentials down when you set up that @1 account, because we won't be able to find your password for you. Donna, on the page of the course that Michelle, the demo course, the homepage has the instructions. So you don't go anywhere else. You go right into the demo course, and the homepage that you land on has the instructions to create an @1 account. And there's a video tutorial there if you need more than the written instructions.
I'm going to start the recording again and ask for folks to reconvene and recognize that anytime we try to do something with a lot of people synchronously with technology, we're going to have problems. So I do apologize if you fell into the group of those who had some challenges getting into the course. All of the different instances of Canvas can be very confusing for folks. And Helen warned me about this. I'll just say that. Helen saying, I told you so. So we did have folks be successful. And I do want to turn our attention over to the course. And let's just take a look together at the demo course. So I'm here in the wisdom wall, which is the one that we set up. I'm just going to reload it. If you're ever on an external tool assignment and this button down here is grayed out, all you need to do is refresh your page and it will become active again. So I'm going to click there to open it up in Flipgrid. And here are our folks who were successful. Yay. And I see that Sandy has received 2 comments in response to her. So this is in Flipgrid, you can have the video responses as well as the back and forth between students, just like in a Canvas discussion. Now there's one more step I want to show you if you are interested in doing a wisdom wall like this one. So remember, you collect the comments from students at the end of your course. And you are all now playing the role of my students, right? To share the videos with a future class, this is what you're going to do. It's actually pretty cool. I'm going to go over to the 3 dots next to Kathy S's video. See that? And select Add to Mix Tapes. You'll see that I have one mixtape set up called Test. I was playing with this yesterday. I don't want to add it to Test. I'm going to create a new mixtape by clicking on Create a Mixtape and call it Wisdom Wall. You can add a description here. This wisdom wall provides advice for you from past participants. And select Create. Now, I don't want to make it password protected because when I share this with my next group of students, I just want them to see it. So I'm going to click Create. And now it's telling me that Kathy's video has been added to that mixtape. Got it. So now I can continue to go through and do the same thing. And now you see that Wisdom Wall appears in my mixtape area and just keep adding additional videos to the mixtape. There may be a way to do this in bulk. I haven't figured that out yet. I'll just do a couple more. Okay. Now we could keep going. You get the point there, right? So now to go to our mixtapes, here's what we're going to do. Click on our profile picture. I'm in the @ONE account, so it shows the @ONE logo in the top right corner, and go to mixtapes. So you see my test and my wisdom wall. I'm going to click on the share icon next to wisdom wall and choose embed, this icon in the middle. And when I click there, it copies the embed code for me. So now I'm going to go back to our course and go to modules. And I've set up this page in our Getting Started module. I'm going to click on that page where it says Words of Wisdom from Past Students. Select Edit. And we're going to go over to the embed option, which is this little icon that looks like a cloud at the top of the text box, rich content editor. If you click there, the embed window pops up and we can paste the embed code and click submit. Now the embed is a little, whoops, I did that wrong.
You just want to put your cursor down below the text.
Yes, I knew that. Gotcha. Let me try that again. Here, let me do it the same way so I don't confuse anybody. Okay, I'm going to go back into edit. I want to put my cursor where I want the embed to appear. So I want it to go under the text and then go to embed. Paste, click submit. And so now it appears underneath the introductory text. And I'm going to click save and publish. So now you folks can actually see that page. It is a little wonky with the scroll bar, and I haven't found a way to really modify that very well. But it does work, and it does pull those videos in there. So you can just click on any one.
Hi everyone, my name is Thea.
And listen, and when those auto captions are done, they will appear there, as this one already does. So that's how you would pull those videos forward for your incoming group of students. And it works pretty well in Flipgrid. It's tricky. It's a lot trickier. In fact, I don't know how it can really be done if you're using a Canvas discussion. So that's one of the reasons why we really recommend the Flipgrid for a wisdom wall. Yeah, so Paula's asking if we can edit the iframe to set the dimensions. I tried doing that yesterday, Paula, and it didn't respond. So yeah, we can try setting it to 100. Let's see if I can make that work. It's a good idea. I think you may have an improvement anyway. Well, that didn't help. It made it made it really actually quite wonky, didn't it? Let me replace that. You're saying set the height to an absolute number. Okay. See what that does. Brilliance. So what we did was once we pasted that embed code, I know this is getting rather technical. If you want to modify it, you can click on edit and then toggle over to the HTML code view by clicking on this icon below the text box. We changed the width number that was there to 100%. It's important that you leave the quote before the number and the quote after the number and just change the middle number to 100%. And then we changed the height. I don't remember what it was originally, but the height we just changed to 800. So 100% width, 800 height.
If the width is a percentage, you don't need to adjust the height. It should maintain the ratio by default. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, well, that was great. We got it. It definitely looks better than it did on the default. Yeah, it gets to see everybody's faces. So I'm going to stop sharing, and we have a little bit of time left for Q&A. I'm glad some of the demonstrations were helpful, and again, apologize for the barriers that many of you did encounter. If you would like to ask a question with your microphone, we'd like to invite you to select the raise hand option. Helen, if you could reactivate that if you haven't already, that would be great.
And there are a few questions in
Q&A.
Q&A.
Oh, and I forgot, we have a Q&A. Remind my brain how this works here. Q&A, where's my Q&A? There it is. Let's see. So Christy's asking, would the direction video for the Flipgrid wisdom wall assignment be recorded using Studio? So Christy, I think you're asking about the video prompt that I added to the topic. You can record, if you want to upload a video, you can record it with anything you want. So you could record with Studio and download it to your computer and upload it into Flipgrid. Alternatively, you can just click record video and record directly into Flipgrid. I just didn't model that because I was trying to save time. In Flipgrid, where and how do you edit captions? Oh, and Eileen has left the response. Thank you for that. Let me see if I can show you. Okay, so let me go over to assignments and click here on our assignment and then go back out to Flipgrid. So this is the view that a teacher sees. It's different from the view that students, which is the view you have now. So for a teacher, for example, if I wanted to edit the captions on Allie's video, I would click on these three dots and then go down to edit captions.
Hi, everyone. I just want
And I can just, oh, and those captions aren't even there yet because it's brand new. Let me try a different one. How do I get back here? Let me go back here. Let me go down to someone who commented a while ago. Go into Sandy's. And there they
My
are.
advice for future students is to, you'll learn a lot, but read the instruction. Learn a lot.
If you had to retype something, you can just type right over it. You can also split the chunks up if you want them to sync better with the words. So that's what the interface looks like. So Aileen is saying, I tend to get an error message when trying to access Flipgrid Q&A. Has happened maybe for the past year. Suggestions, contact Flipgrid. I don't know, unfortunately. I can't answer that one. Let's see. And Eileen is asking how to put a timer into your slides. That's not a Flipgrid question, but I can just tell you very quickly. That's a matter of just embedding a YouTube video in your slides. So if I just go into Google Slides and take all this stuff out, I can go over to YouTube and grab any video like this one. And what you're looking for is the share link. So you grab the share link and you go back to your slides and you just do insert video. Put the URL into that box, click search. There's the video, select it and choose select. And so the video of the timer, I just went to YouTube and entered 2-minute timer and grabbed the video. So it's the same process. How did I get my video into the upper right corner of Flipgrid? That is where we did the edit topic. To do that, you would click on the 3 dots at the top of your topic, which is what Flipgrid calls the activity, and go to edit topic. You will, now you see my video because it's there, but it's this section that you're looking for, topic media. And if you don't have anything there, you'll see all kinds of options. You can upload a video, you can record a video, you can add a document, different options appear there. And Mary, we did have an option for a digital badge for this course. It required self-enrolling, or it required registering for the course with a fee at the beginning of our series back in September. So that option is no longer available at this time. I'm sorry. And however, you will get an email. If you're just talking about this session today, Mary, you will get an email confirming your attendance at this 1.5-hour session. And you can use that email and give it to your institution if they will give you credit for anything for that time that you spent here. That's just a college decision. It's not one that we can help with. Tracy is asking to demo how to find the embed code. Tracy, can you tell me what embed, are you talking about the embed code for the mixtape? If you're talking about the embed code, yeah, sure. So you're going to go to the mixtape area, and to get there from any page in Flipgrid, you're going to click on your profile picture in the top right corner and choose mixtapes. And if you forget how to do this, go to Flipgrid support and search for mixtapes, or go to the link that I have on our slides that explains how to do this. Then again, I don't think I have the share step in there. Okay, so the embed code, you just click on share next to the mixtape name, and then click on embed, and it copies it for you. Okay. Yes, Teresa, that will stay available to you. Oh, and Helen already answered that. The Flipgrids will stay available in the course if you want to revisit them. And we do also, just lastly, I didn't show this, but if you set up the Flipgrid integration in your Canvas instance, if you have that step 1 done, right? Let me just delete that slide. If you have this step done, then you can go out to the Canvas Commons by logging into your college instance where your course is. Select Commons over on the left. And if you use the acronym FIHOT, which stands for Fall into Humanized Online Teaching, you're going to find a wisdom wall and a self-affirming icebreaker set up to be used with the Flipgrid LTI. So as long as you have the LTI installed, you can pull these in, and that will instantly create step 2 for you. It'll create the external tool assignment, and then you'll need to manually go into that assignment and complete step 3. Thank you, everyone. We're over. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you for your time. I'm going to stop the recording, and we will have this